If we could please have a seat, if there's enough chairs out there, if everyone would please take a seat and check your cell phone to make sure it's turned on silent or vibrate. We will start this morning with a prayer. Hold on one second. Jay Teague, if you would please come forward, and he is our fire department chaplain, and we would love to have you do our prayer this morning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Y'all pray extra hard today. The city council's meeting on April Fool's Day, so.
Amen.
You would please bow your heads. Father God, we thank you for another April 1st, Lord. We thank you for the warmer weather this week. We ask that you be with all those who traveled here today and who will be traveling later today, Father God. And we just ask that all of our members today would be about your business first, Lord. That any issues discussed today, Father God, you would anoint with wisdom. You would anoint with knowledge. And Father, that you see all the struggles, you see all the emotional toil that our volunteers and our city council members and their staff go through every day to serve this community, Father. So we just pray that you would give them and their families favor over their hearts, favor over their minds, Lord. And Lord, we just pray that they would also feel and know the support of the community that they represent, Lord. We pray for unity. We bind division. Also, Lord, I'd like to actually ask for favor over all of our students that are in attendance today, Lord. Father, please be with us this day. We give you all praise and glory, and we honor you today, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Thank you.
For our pledges today, we are going to have student council representatives from Trinity Lutheran School. So President Shane Whitehead, Vice President Lucy Rode, Treasurer Ashley Scott, Secretary Landon Humphreys, High School Representative Bella Escobar, Middle School Representative Emma Cardenas, Upper Elementary Representative Lily Mendoza, Middle Elementary Representative Tawny Hurt, Lower Elementary Representative Kaylee Durier, and Early Childhood Representative Raven Palos. Please come forward. All right, we're going to turn around and do this flag first. You ready?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
You happen to see this on that alley abandonment? Look at this. This to me looks like the original deed.
We have 4 proclamations today. We will start with the first one, which is a proclamation of April 2nd, 2019 as National Service Recognition Day. Is anyone here to accept the proclamation? Lots of people here to come on. Service to others is a hallmark of the American character and central to how we meet our challenges, and the nation's elected leaders are increasingly turning to national service and volunteerism as a cost-effective strategy to meet their needs. And AmeriCorps and Senior Corps participants address the most pressing challenges facing our communities. They educate students for 21st century jobs, fight the opioid epidemic, respond to natural disasters, and support veterans and military families. And national service expands economic opportunity by creating more sustainable, resilient communities and providing education, career skills, and leadership abilities for those who serve. And AmeriCorps and Senior Corps participants serve in more than 50,000 locations across the country, bolstering the civic, neighborhood, and faith-based organizations that are so vital to our economic and social well-being. And national service represents a unique public-private partnership that invests in community solutions and leverages non-federal resources to strengthen community impact and increase the return on taxpayer dollars. And national service participants demonstrate commitment, dedication, and patriotism by making an intensive commitment to service, a commitment that remains with them in their future endeavors. And the Corporation for National and Community Service shares a priority with local leaders nationwide to engage citizens, improve lives, and strengthen communities, and is joining with the National League of Cities, the National Association of Counties, Cities of Service, and local leaders across the country for National Service Recognition Day on April 2nd, 2019. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim April 2nd, 2019 as National Service Recognition Day in San Angelo, Texas, and encourage residents to recognize the positive impact of national service in our community, to thank those who serve, and to find ways to give back to their communities. Would you like to say some words? And here is your proclamation. Let me get out of your way.
Well, good morning, everyone. National service across the country makes a difference in the communities where volunteers serve. And San Angelo is really unique for a community of our size that we have all three Senior Corps programs, RSVP, foster grandparents, and senior companions, and that we have a strong AmeriCorps project at ASU. Sarah Lamong is the project director for that. And we have representatives from these programs with us today. From RSVP, there's 4 representatives supporting those other 500 plus volunteers that serve. And Sarah has a group with her too. And so service in the communities is what brings a community together and adds value to the community, and we're proud to be part of that participation. Thank you. Okay, good. And Senior Corps and AmeriCorps, San Angelo.
We are now going to have a proclamation of April 14th through the 20th, 2019 as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. Do I have individuals here to accept this proclamation? Emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services, and when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, and paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. And the safety of our police officers and firefighters is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone the San Angelo Emergency Communications Center, and public safety telecommunicators are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services. And public safety telecommunicators are the single vital link for our police officers and firefighters by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them information, and ensuring their safety. And Public Safety Telecommunicators of the San Angelo Public Safety Communications Center have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients. And each dispatcher has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job in the past year. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim April 14th through 20th, 2019 as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in San Angelo, Texas, and call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens and honor the men and women whose diligence and professionalism keep our city and citizens safe. On behalf of our fellow dispatchers, thank you. National Dispatch Week is something that I've been lucky to be part of for the last 14 years as dispatching. Not only is it a week acknowledged by the City of San Angelo, but by the agencies across the states. It's a time set aside, a week where we honor those who've dedicated their lives to public safety, and it's a time where we're very humbled by the acknowledgement from you and the city for the hard work and diligence set aside by every member of this department. So we say thank you. Have a good day. Thank you.
Briefly, I just want to say these are the heroes behind the scenes. These are who take care of the officers, the paramedics, the fire department. They never get the credit they deserve. It's a very stressful job, high turnover rate, and for that, I thank you very much.
Proclamation of April 2019 as Alcohol Awareness Month. Alcohol is a primary factor in the 4 leading causes of death for young ages 10 to 21, and almost 100,000 persons die each year from alcohol-related causes: drinking and driving crashes, other accidents, falls, fires, alcohol-related homicides, and suicide. And approximately 15 million current drinkers in the United States are dependent on alcohol. And adolescents use alcohol more than tobacco or illicit drugs, and young people begin drinking on average at 13 years of age. And young people who begin drinking before age 15 are 4 times more likely to develop alcohol dependence than those who begin drinking at age 21. And alcohol abuse is linked to as many as 2/3 of all sexual assaults and date rapes. And the typical American will see 100,000 alcohol-related commercials before he or she turns 18. For all these reasons, the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Council for the Concho Valley and the Concho Valley Cares Coalition are asking the residents of San Angelo to join in recognizing April as Alcohol Awareness Month. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim April 2019 as Alcohol Awareness Month in San Angelo, Texas, and call upon all residents, parents, governmental agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, hospitals, schools, and colleges in the City of San Angelo to support efforts that will increase community awareness and support for individuals and families coping with alcoholism in our community. Would the organization for this proclamation please come forward? Should have asked you to come forward before I read it, but I got ahead of myself. My apologies.
Down too, so I'm a little shorter. Good morning, everyone. My name is Courtney Bingham, and I am the Prevention Director at the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Council for the Concho Valley. And behind me, we have part of our amazing prevention team. We couldn't do what we do without them. We also want to say thank you to the Mayor and City Council for having us this morning. April is Alcohol Awareness Month, and it's a time to learn about the health and social problems caused by excessive alcohol consumption. The National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism encourages the public to dedicate this month to understanding how excessive drinking can affect health, to evaluating their own drinking habits, and to discovering the latest developments in treatments for alcohol use disorders. As we take this moment to proclaim April as Alcohol Awareness Month, we want to also encourage the citizens of San Angelo to be a strong prevention tool for the youth in our community. According to the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, of those who begin drinking before the age of 14, 47% experience dependence at some point in their lives, versus 9% of those who began drinking at the age of 21 or older. While the legal drinking age is 21, we know that the brain continues developing until the age of 25, and that anything we put into our bodies before that point affects how our brain develops, how it grows, and it affects future brain development and functions. As a community, I encourage everyone to step up and educate our youth on the importance of staying alcohol-free and to educate and support them in making this life-changing decision. Together, we can help the youth in our community to be the best, healthiest, and safest versions of themselves. And before I go, I would encourage everyone to come out to ASU tomorrow. We will be there. It's going to be a bunch of community partners. And we're going to have just basically an alcohol awareness event from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. In the University Center. So come out, check it out, and come see what we have going. Thank you.
All right, we'll get this right this time. Come on up here. Angela, Brian May. How are you today? Good, good. Proclamation of April 2019 as I Chose Angelo State Month. Angelo State University and the community of San Angelo are partnering together in celebration of current students, future students, faculty, staff, and alumni who have chosen to participate in the auspices of higher education at Angelo State University. And Angelo State University, with an enrollment of 10,387 undergraduate and graduate students, is an integral part of the city of San Angelo and a citadel of higher learning in West Texas. And it employs 460 faculty members, 550 staff members, and 750 student workers who are a vital part of this community. And Angelo State University has graduated 47,930 students since its inception in 1965. And Angelo State University educational opportunities have grown to include 1 doctoral degree in physical therapy, 21 master's degree programs, 42 undergraduate degree programs, and over 100 majors and concentrations. And Angelo State University is this year celebrating its 90th graduating class. And the month of April 2019 will be celebrated as I Chose Angelo State Month at Angelo State University by current students, future students, faculty, staff, and alumni through campus events, social media, and local media outlets. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim April 2019 as I Chose Angelo State Month in San Angelo and call upon the citizens of our area to recognize this remarkable display of pride in our community and the comprehensive educational opportunities at Angelo State University. Thank you. Looks like I forgot to sign up and speak, and then I will sign it.
Okay. Well, you did a very good job of reading it, that's for sure. I just want to thank everyone. We have a lot of our administration in the background, and we take this relationship very, very serious. I'm very proud to be a part of a state that the people who are appointed by the governor or elected by the public make the final decision. And I can tell you, I speak to presidents all over the country, and no one has a closer relationship with the university and the city council like we do. Many of the members of this city council are alumni, and we appreciate it, and they do a great job, and the support we get from this city is amazing. And so that relationship we want to continue to foster, and we stand in partnership with our sister education institutions like Howard College and SAISD to bring quality education to the city of San Angelo. Of over 1,000 employees, and we hope to announce close to 11,000 students next fall, this is really important to all of us. Thank you very much. Oh, and I want to recognize Ms. Van Fleet. She will talk to you about the students here.
Thank you, Dr. May. If I could have our students that are represented here come up to the front right behind here, and then our members of ASU, please come up as well. We would like to take a moment to introduce a few of our area students who have chosen to attend Angelo State University this fall, along with several staff members who will welcome them into the RAM family. First off, we have Central High School, Keena Bolding, presented by Dr. Flores, Vice President for Student Affairs and Enrollment Management. Next, we have Lakeview High School, Manuel Baeza, presented by Jeff Sefcik, Executive Director of Enrollment Management. Next, we have the Texas Leadership Charter Academy, Ray Manuel, presented by Lisa Hernandez, Director of Admissions. Next, we have Grape Creek High School, Samantha Moreno, presented by Angie Wright, Vice President for Finance and Administration. Next, we have Wall High School, Destiny Jimenez, presented by Jamie Aiken, Vice President for Development and Alumni Relations. And last but not least, we have Howard College. We have Zachary German, presented by Kimberly Adams, Director of Development and Alumni Services. All right, thank you all very much.
Congratulations.
Got an empty room now, don't we?
Oh, Steve.
All right, we will now open up for public comment. Issues or items that are not on the regular agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, begin by stating their name, and limit remarks to less than 3 minutes. Council members may request that a discussed item be placed on a future agenda. The council takes public comment on all irregular agenda items during the discussion of those items. Do I have anyone here today who would like to make a public comment?
Morning, Mayor, Council. I just wanted to remind everybody that is watching TV or that may be watching this later that watering restrictions change as of today, April 1st. You're now allowed to water twice every 7 days, but not between the hours of noon to 6, and still no more than 1 inch per week, and still water cannot run down the street or gutter more than 150 feet. So I just wanted to make that announcement. Thank you.
Good morning. Guy Andrews, Director of Economic Development for the City of San Angelo Development Corporation. I just want to remind everyone that this week we're kicking off our comprehensive housing study. The purpose of this study will be to gauge both the supply and demand for housing and determine if there are any gaps within housing in San Angelo. This week, the consultants are going to be meeting with various focus groups such as our realtors, our home builders, bankers, mortgage bankers, affordable housing people, and so forth. One of the things I wanted to tell you, though, in a couple of weeks following this week, we will be having a survey that will be widely distributed to everyone. And we would like to have everyone's input, whether you're happy with the housing that you have now or if you'd like to see other alternatives in housing made available. We'd like to have that input. Even though it's widely distributed through a lot of distribution lists, if you would like to participate in that and want to make sure that you're on that list, you can contact me at guy.andrews@cosatx.us. That's guy.andrews@cosatx.us, or you can call me at 653-7197, and we'll make sure that you'll get a survey within your hand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. What happened to your crowd?
I know, that's what I said.
It's hard to hold them, isn't it? I'm Bruce Partain, President and CEO of the San Angelo Chamber of Commerce. And I just wanted to thank the city of San Angelo, in particular the city council. The chamber every year for the last 14 years has put on an event called Goodfellow Appreciation Day. Part of it is kind of low key because we don't really announce it to the general public. It's really an opportunity for us to buy a picnic lunch, sound like Yogi Bear there, for our active military. But without the city and really all the volunteers that come out through the city and the facilities that we do use for that day, it would be impossible to do it. So as we start working towards that in the next few weeks and really tying some things together, before we get too wrapped up into it, I just want to say thank you very much for that and appreciate not only those who serve by election, but also those who serve as volunteers really behind the scenes who are staff members, because many, many people go out of their way to make this a possibility, a dream come true. So thank you so much for what you do to encourage those staff members to stay with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Further public comment? With no further public comment, we will move into the regular agenda. Oh, sorry, we're going to do the consent agenda. I'm trying to get us through real fast. Maybe I'll slow down a bit here. Okay, we are now going to open up for the consent agenda. Do I have any items that council would like to be pulled from the consent agenda? Tommy?
No, ma'am.
Tom?
No, ma'am.
Harry?
No, ma'am.
Lucy?
No, ma'am.
Lane?
No, ma'am.
Billy?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Item F, please,
F.
Mayor.
Okay. With item F pulled from the consent agenda, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
And that is a move and a second. Any public comment? No public comment. We'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. The consent agenda is approved with the exception of item F. Item F is consider ratifying a resolution by the COSA DC Board authorizing the use of sales and use tax funds in an amount not to exceed $3,750,000 over a 5-year period for infrastructure improvements to the Chadbourne Street pedestrian corridor, a project authorized under Chapter 505 of the Texas Local Government Code, and authorizing the city manager to execute a memorandum of understanding with the City of San Angelo Development Corporation. You're on, Bob.
Good morning. I'm Bob Schneeman. I'm the city's Economic Development Project Manager. This item, I'll just go over it briefly first, if you like. It's allocating $3.75 million for the North Chadbourn streetscape project improvements. The reason that we're doing this, back in April of 2017, the board approved $750,000 a year to be allocated to this project over a 5-year period, which basically totals to $3.75 million. In order for us to do that, state law requires that the board pass a resolution designating it as a project under the state's definition. It requires that we issue public notice in a newspaper and that we cannot expend those funds until 60 days after the date of notice of that publication. And it also requires a memorandum of understanding, or a performance agreement basically, between the city and the Development Corporation to do that. The way we intend to expend those funds is $1.5 million is set aside for phase 1 of the project, and then we will budget $750,000 a year annually for the next 3 years to complete that.
Bob, I might also add that this item went before council as part of the Chadbourn funding component. So council approved that funding component. I think his element is just a follow-up of the formal resolution. So council also reviewed it and approved that when we submitted Phase A for the Chadbourn project.
So the $3.7 million is just for Phase A?
No, ma'am. I believe the allocation is about $1.5 million for phase 1, and then the remainder as it is needed.
Okay.
As council approved on the Chadbourn, was those dollars were allocated for the project, and they were to be used for Phase A, and then any remaining dollars could be used as contingency for Phase A or for future projects associated with Chadbourn.
And so, Bob, I noticed in some of the background information that it looked like we didn't get all of the funding, maybe from grants that we had anticipated. Is that correct?
I think I defer that one to Rick.
The only thing that did not happen was in the initial concept, which was early on, there was a potential for MPO dollars to come forward. We had talked about that. The state then changed, saying that although the local MPO took action to allocate those, the state then changed their approach and said, actually, now we're not going to let you do that. So the MPO dollars did not come forward. So we brought a new plan to council which showed that taken out. And so those plans were approved by council each time as those funding sources changed.
Okay. And then one final question, Bob. Specifically, what will Phase A include? What infrastructure?
Phase A is Chadbourn, of course, from from the river to Beauregard. And so it includes basically entire new street, it includes pedestrian elements, lighting, those kind of things. It also includes, as Russell talked about last time, infrastructure, meaning our water, sewer, those kind of things in those areas. And what you approved in the Chadbourn project was actually to do your infrastructure up front for the entire component. So you're doing infrastructure actually from Washington to Houston Hart. And then the actual Phase A for the street and the streetscape is the river to Beauregard. And then you also authorize design of Phase B, which is Beauregard to Houston Hart, which are the construction drawings, so that we're ready to go and apply, where you authorized applying for additional grants from the state through the set-aside program. So we'll have Phase B designed as well.
Thank you. Thank both of you. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve item F.
Is there a second?
Second.
With a motion and a second, is there any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 With none opposed, the motion passes 7-0. We will now move in to the regular agenda. Item A, discussion and possible action regarding the Lake Nasworthy sewer study, and the presentation will be made by Alan Wolke, I probably said that wrong, and Allison Struby.
Yes,
Oh,
good
it's
morning,
only
Mayor and
you.
Council again. So back in March of 2018, you authorized a contract with CDM Smith for the evaluation of the Lake Nasworthy sewer area. This is a very small area of our sewer system, but it carries a lot of weight and a lot of complexities. And so I want to introduce Alan Wilkie, you said that correct, Mayor, and with CDM Smith, and he's going to step through kind of what they've been working on to get to this point, and some alternatives and suggestions possibly moving forward to solve some of the issues at Lake Nasworthy.
Mayor and Council, good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to present the objectives, the work that we did and the results, and then talk to you about recommendations about how to move forward on this important project. Show me how to use, oh, there it goes, just a little bit delayed. So the first thing we're going to go over, so the map that you see here is, you're very familiar with it, but I guess if people are watching on TV and don't know exactly where Nasworthy is, we have it outlined in a big red box. We're going to talk about the background and objectives, the key issues for serving wastewater in this area, the summary of findings, major alternatives, and then we'll leave time for questions. Of course, if there's any questions while we're talking, please step in. Existing wastewater at Lake Nasworthy is very challenging. It's the area in that part of the city wants to drain towards the lake, and of course you have the lake being an impediment to natural gravity wastewater service. So the area is developed through a lot of, I hate to use the word haphazard, but it almost seems like that, and you'll see in a little bit. Very little gravity service. There are grinder pumps out there. There are 26 lift stations out there that serve the area.
Could you make sure you speak into the mic?
Thank you. 26 lift stations that serve their area. The city only has 52 total. So half of the lift stations in the city are out there serving the Lake Nasworthy area. Meanwhile, the area provides or sends to the city about 500,000 gallons a day of wastewater, and the city treats a total of 8 million gallons a day. So a 16th of the wastewater that's created in the city, but it has half the lift stations. This is just a map showing the Lake Nasworthy area. The A, B, C are the areas that are showing the grinder pump stations. I believe there's about 110 grinder pump stations out there that are serving houses, both individually and in multiples. The city is responsible for maintaining those, and it's very difficult because a lot of times there's no easements or no formal agreement on how to get that done. That's one of the areas of concern. The other is the lift stations. We talked about the 26 lift stations. They are the orange circles that are listed there. So the key issues are the system being reliant on these 26 lift stations and lots of force mains that we'll look at in just a minute, 106 grinder systems, and all this potentially limits the development potential in the Lake Nasworthy area. As an engineer, I find this completely amazing. So this is the complexity of the system that you have out there. Again, the orange.
Sounds like a bad thing, Alan.
Yes, it is. It's kind of the knack, So
it looks like a game we should be playing.
Yeah, it is. I have been doing this in June. I will have been doing this for 40 years, and this is probably the most complicated wastewater collection system I've ever seen. The orange circles again are the lift stations. The blue squares, if you can find them in there, A, B, C, and B, are the grinder pump station areas. So in engineering school and through practice, they say a lift station should pump in a force main to a gravity system. And what we have here is what's termed a header lift station or force main system. So here you have 1, 2, 3, 4 pump stations plus these two pumping into a single force main. What makes it complicated is when one pump is pumping, there's one set of hydraulic conditions, and when all those pump stations are pumping, there's a completely different set of hydraulic conditions. And what we found out through the modeling is when all of them are trying to pump, none of them can pump because none of them are big enough to get down the force main. So it makes a very complicated situation. Yes, and because it sits around, the longer it does, it's not wine. It doesn't age well. So the Nasworthy study consisted of the following. The first thing we did was flow monitoring, and we started out in March, and it didn't catch any storms. And we do this to try to determine how much flow is coming in from the customers out there. We were a little concerned that maybe it was more of a holiday flow issue than it was a normal day. Actually, we didn't see that much difference between holidays and normal days. We also are looking for how much infiltration inflow that might be in the system, because that dictates the size of the pumps and the force mains. We found that there was a little bit, but nothing more than what would be expected. Again, the flow monitoring showed that it was about 500,000 gallons a day coming out of the Lake Nasworthy area. The peak flow was 1.6, so a little over 3 for wastewater flow. That's not bad. We created a hydraulic model. The last time the city had a hydraulic model done of its wastewater system was 1998. Technology's moved on. I don't know how many of us are using computers from 1998, but you can imagine that was a little bit dated. So we brought it up to a more recent wastewater system and analyzed it through looking at the force mains flows and things like that. Overall service, so the recommendations, in the analysis we found that there were these issues I mentioned a little bit about force mains being able to be used through multiple lift stations and actually getting it to serve. The biggest thing is it's barely able to keep up with the flows now. In fact, there are some lift stations that we recommend be looked into and upgraded at this time. But we started looking at alternatives that would provide additional capacity out there for development. One of the alternatives was the South Concho River interceptor. It ties into a 42-inch interceptor that's in the city at that location, almost at that location, and then follows the South Concho River up to a point here where it takes a considerable amount of the flow off of the lift station system and puts it in a gravity interceptor. It has the potential to remove several of the lift stations. One of the things that it does that I think is important, there is a force main that crosses the Lake Nasworthy right there, well, at the end of that. And it is a single pipe. We're not sure how it was constructed, whether it was laid on the lake bottom or actually trenched across the bottom. It's a single pipe, takes all the lift stations on the south side of the lake and sends it across the lake. It has been tested and it isn't leaking, good news is, but it is also a single point of failure that if something happened there, all those lift stations on the south side of the lake would be out of service. Likewise, a lot of those other force mains where we were seeing all the lift stations pumping into are all considered single points of service. A break there puts out large areas of that part of the system. The interceptor would be able to remove the force main that goes under the lake, but it replaces it with a force main that goes across the lake there. It would be a double force main, so if one went out, the other one would be used. It would also be cased, so if there was a leak, it wouldn't flow directly, wastewater wouldn't flow directly into Lake Nasworthy. The other option is a much more simple, less comprehensive alternative. It's basically upgrades one of the lift stations, the North Bentwood lift station, which needs to be upgraded anyway because of service issues. And it would construct a backup force main across Lake Nasworthy where we talked about it earlier. This would remove none of the lift stations. Service would remain about the same. The ability to develop the area would be still restricted quite a bit. The cost comparison. With the interceptor, the cost is quite a bit more. $32 million is the opinion of probable construction cost. The existing system upgrades, just to kind of hold it where it is $9 million. Some pros and cons. For the interceptor, we have potential wastewater service to Butler Farm and Country Club areas, which are currently on septic, and those could be taken off of the septic system and put on a collection system. The gravity sewer requires little maintenance once it's installed. Potential to remove the older lift stations in the Lake Nasworthy area and to reduce the operating costs that the city incurs by operating these 26 lift stations. The cons, obviously, is the much higher capital cost.
Alan, excuse me. I have a question. Billy? Would you go back to the previous slide, please? Where you said has the potential to move older lift stations. Yes, how many are we potentially looking at?
I think there's 6 or 8 that can be removed of the 26.
And when you
Some
say
of it
potential, Why is it so not defined? Potential doesn't say it may, it may not, it could not. What does potential mean?
I think that has to do with whether the city expends further funds to take them out of service. It provides the opportunity. The $32 million does not include the removal of the lift stations to take them out by gravity service.
So in other words, $32 million does not remove some of the older lift stations.
Removes 2. It doesn't remove the 6 or 8. It has the potential to remove those others.
And you say potential to reduce operating costs.
Because of operating fewer lift stations.
But only two would be taken out, maybe 6. So that's not much, 2, maybe 6. So it doesn't really look like it's going to reduce operating costs that much.
Not significantly.
Because there's too many red flags, question marks.
Yeah, we tried to quantify that, but we weren't able to get the information on each individual lift station, so we can't quantify exactly how much operating cost reduction would be.
And the higher capital cost is just the difference between $32 million and $9 million.
Yes, ma'am.
And if on the $32 million, if the $9 million was spent today, it would only give us a little bit more carry, and would not, if in 5 years we needed more capacity, the 32 wouldn't be reduced by 9, it would still be 32 on top of 9.
Yes, that's correct.
Or more.
Rising cost of everything.
Things are cheaper.
I have one other question, Alan. When you say remove the older lift stations, do they actually have to be removed, or could you just shut them down? Ignorance and not understanding how all the system works.
Some of them, in most simple terms, they could just be shut down. But usually it's always a good idea to at least remove the equipment and backfill the wet well so it's not a potential danger.
Like what danger?
Somebody getting into it, falling into it, or collapsing at some point in the future. The wastewater corrodes the concrete sometimes, and it could be a potential, collapse.
And what would be the potential cost? You said it wasn't included in the $32 million. So what's the potential cost of additional cost to remove the older lift stations?
I'd have to look into that. Don't know that off the top of my head.
Thank you.
So, okay, so then the question mark is, on $9 million, how much more capacity does it give us versus $32 million? And on the $32 million, does that give us incremental capacity for 30 years or 50 years, or how many additional years?
So the $9 million basically takes care of what's out there right now. The $32 million provides 2 million gallons a day of additional capacity for that area. So significantly more than what you have out there right now.
And if you support the $32 million, it's not like you can say we're going to spend $10 million this year and then $20 million down the road. It's really signing up for $32 million. You can't split that up.
To achieve the result, yes, ma'am. Because
So it has to be a full
the
package.
From the 42-inch all the way back up to Lake Nasworthy, yes.
And do we have to get any additional paperwork from the government to do this? Or we could, if we approve it and find a way to fund it, then it is moved forward, so no more additional permits would be required to change this new system?
I believe when we looked at it, a lot of the property is owned by the city of San Angelo. And so I think that it would move forward fairly quickly in the right-of-way and easement area. With any public expenditure of funds, there's always the Texas Historical Commission that has to review the project, so there would have to be archaeological studies along there to make sure there's nothing of cultural significance that's impacted. Of course, all projects that are in waters of the U.S. have to go through at least a pre-construction notification, make sure that waters of the United States aren't impacted, and then a lot of times endangered species are pulled in that way as well. So there is some permitting that every public project has to go through to get final approval.
It sounds like a lot of approval. Harry?
My question is this: if we decide that we want to go with this 32 million, does that take the grinder pumps out of service? Does that allow that?
It allows them to be taken out of service. It does not take them out of service.
So it allows us to hook up to each one of those particular properties the ability for sewer systems instead of using the grinder pumps.
Right. We had looked at alternatives to take all the grinder pumps out of service. The area is relatively flat, so putting in gravity sewer in the areas where the grinder pumps are was difficult. We looked at other options. One of the options that we did look at was a vacuum system, where instead of each individual house having a grinder pump that pumps into a force main, there would be a grinder pump in each, there'd be a vacuum system, and each house would have a vacuum valve that when the pit or the holding tank fills, the vacuum valve opens and allows the wastewater to be sucked out to a central station. And from there, it goes into a lift station and is pumped out. So it would take away all the individual grinder pumps and put it in with a more centralized system.
So I guess this may be a question for Allison, but how often do we have to go out there and work on those grinder pumps or unplug them or do whatever we got to do to them?
During rain events, our utility maintenance department is out there continuously, almost till rain event stops and those the localized kind of flooding events kind of stop. But we are out there usually on a day-to-day routine for all. I mean, with 106 of them, we're constantly working on them.
That means we're out there. Sometimes we got people out there on holidays and weekends, so we're paying overtime for these people to do those types of things. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I think we probably, if you've got that kind of data at some time in the future, would like to see that, because I think what we're going to see is long-term, we're going to end up saving money by spending the $32 million up front.
Tommy?
Alan or Allison, either one, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but did I understand that the $9 million option does not really address, or let's just use the word fix, the odor issue, but the $32 million would?
The $9 million option doesn't really change the number of lift stations. It upgrades the lift station so that at Brentwood so that it works better. Because it's over capacity right now. So really nothing would change there as far as the odor issue. Grinder pumps would still be there. All the 26 lift stations would still be there. All the force mains would stay just the way they are. A $32 million option would relieve some of those areas, and it wouldn't be sitting around in the force mains quite so long. The 8-inch underneath Lake Nasworthy would be gone, which is a very long force main. Wastewater sitting in force mains for a long periods of time is what causes the odor issue.
Yes.
So we didn't look at that specifically, but just from experience working in this for a while, it would reduce it some.
So the council's probably heard me say this before, but businesses were shut down a couple of years ago in that area specifically because of the odor. So if the $32 million is something that addresses this, in my opinion, not only because it's gonna cost more in the future to deal with the $32 million, since the $9 million really doesn't address any of that.
It doesn't give us any more capacity.
It gives us no more capacity. You know, it seems to me that the $32 million is our better option.
Well, and I think too that, you know, have had limited discussion on future development and growth at the lake, and if we start talking about an industrial park at the airport, we would have to have that anyway. So I just guess I don't see a need to spend $9 million and still not have a solution for the future. I think we need to be more forward-thinking. I think
we've got a development out there right now that we are not allowing to develop any further because we do not have the capacity today. So we are impeding development as we sit here and speak because of the issue that exists.
That's correct, and there's many issues right now. So I guess the biggest, Allison, did you want to share something?
I just wanted to mention that as a part of this evaluation, CDM Smith did work with our consultants that are doing the airport master plan. I'm not sure what the exact title is, but the area that is looking at that business park outside the airport, and we have accommodated or looked at future flows from that area, incorporated that into this model and those type of things. So I do want y'all to know that that was incorporated within this. And I believe that the 2 million gallons a day excess would be over and above that airport basically volume that we've set aside for the airport. So we're talking $2 million in excess of what y'all could potentially have at the airport.
Can we have a little verbiage, Michael, on how we would, because I think we all believe that we need to do the $32 million project. The question is, how do we finance this?
Well, we have the borrowing capacity. The question is, how do you fund debt service for $32 million? We've talked about the possibility of accessing the Nasworthy Fund through an election, but that would only reduce the amount necessary. If we wanted to stage this for some years out in the future, we could affect the rates and save up and pay cash, or if we wanted to move ahead without delay, which I think is probably going to be council's preference, we can look at what it would take to borrow and finance, and then build that into the rate study.
So this was kind of the direction I was hoping to get from y'all, is which one of these options y'all were wanting to look at, whether it's the $9 million or the $32 million amount. Once we kind of have y'all's guidance, we can further investigate which one more in depth, how we're going to pay for it. Because even with the $9 million, we'd still be looking at how are we going to pay for that? So I just wanted to get y'all's overall direction, make sure y'all are aware of the issues and kind of an update on the study. But with whatever suggestion y'all are, or alternative y'all are proposing us to further investigate, we can take that from there and then bring back future funding options and how we can move this project forward.
Do I have a motion from council? Oh, wait, do you have?
I have one other question. Allison, so is this an either or? There are no more options other than 32 million or 9 million?
No, these are the two options. Yes, ma'am.
So with that, yes, Michael.
The $32 million option would leave the pipeline that crosses the lake in service, and we would be reliant upon it. What is the remaining useful life for that pipe? And if it needs to be replaced, are we looking at $9 million anyway?
Michael, could you ask that question again?
If we go with the interceptor alternative,
right,
we still are crossing the lake with the old pipe, and it is still in service. Is that correct?
No.
We're taking that pipe
That
out
pipe
of
will
service?
be out of service.
Completely out of service?
Completely out of service.
It's a redundant system that would
But
be
yeah,
going
it's
in.
a redundant system.
So
isn't
with
it?
the $32 million option, the current 8-inch line that goes underneath Lake Nasworthy would be abandoned, and we would install these two parallel cased pipelines across an arm of Lake Nasworthy to get to the interceptor. So the one that concerns us the most, the 8-inch uncased single force main, would be abandoned.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'll make a motion if you want one. I would move that we direct staff to pursue the $32 million option and bring back possible funding alternatives for that option.
Second.
Is there any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the $32 million project, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Motion passes 7-0. So you will come back then at our next meeting. Do you believe the next meeting you'll have the potential financing strategy?
I think we'll look at a May meeting for bringing back funding options. I think the next meeting's a little soon to have these type of funding options worked through, and we want to make sure we're really thorough on that.
With that as well.
Okay. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda, item B, is first reading and public hearing of an ordinance approving the abandonment and vacation of all public alleys comprising .267 acres or 12,030 square feet within Block 15 of the Millspall Addition, generally located north of West Washington Drive, west of South Chadbourne Street, south of Santa Fe Depot, and east of South Irving Street. John?
Thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. You can see on the map here the alleys in question. It's right there, as you mentioned, by the Santa Fe Depot couple of other graphics here showing the future land use and the zoning in the area, and a few pictures. Actually, I'm going to go back in just a second. This is the original plat of the area before the railroad. At some point, the railroad came in and it took out a portion of that, but it wasn't clear how that all happened, and that's one of the reasons you see part of the abandonment itself. Let me go back to that. Includes part of that area over the railroad area. So just to be clear, the resolution will abandon all of the alleys within that original block. That way it covers it, whether the dedication to the railroad right-of-way technically abandon the alleys or not. This covers us in any case. One of the issues here, and the reason this was brought up by this applicant, this property here is landlocked basically, and so what this would do would be allow him, and he's working with the adjacent property owners to get basically an in and out. He would get part of that alleyway to provide a direct access to the street for his property.
For his property, is that what you said?
Yes. So rather than being landlocked here with no access to a public street, he's working with these other property owners as part of the replat that they will do. One of the conditions of approval is a replat. He would work with those properties to get that access. If for some reason, you'll notice one of the conditions, if for some reason he's not able to work out an arrangement with those property owners, there is a condition that they provide him an easement across those properties. What is now the alley, once it's abandoned and they take ownership, if they don't agree to transfer that ownership to him to provide a direct access to the street, they will at a minimum have to provide him with an access easement so that he does have that access to the roads. This does preserve, let me get to those conditions, but this does preserve a utility easement for the existing utilities in that area as well. We did send out our notifications, did not receive any in opposition, and of course one in favor. These are the staff recommendations, including the 5 conditions. Most of these conditions are the normal ones, but keeping the utility easement, for example, providing fire code access or fire apparatus access to that landlocked property as well. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Harry, do you have a question?
I actually sat in the Planning Commission meeting for this particular item, and I have to agree with the Planning Commission. I move to approve as presented.
Let me see if there's any other questions or comments first. Just a minute, Harry. Any other questions or comments from council? All right, so Harry has a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have public comment? With none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. John, before you sit down, would you go back to the pictures a minute? I want to point out something. The one, keep going back, 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 back. And yeah, the one, that picture on the southwest, not that big billboard, but on the further, what would be my left on that picture. We need to have Ross Coleman take a look. There's a sign that is hanging down. It looks like it could fall off at any moment. It looks really dangerous. That's on Washington and Chadburn. It's tin, and it's on its last little piece of tin before it's rusted out. So please have someone look at that. Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, with that, we'll move into our closed session, which there is none today. So we will do a follow-up in administrative issues. Obviously, nothing in closed session, so we will have the following various board nominations: Design and Historic Review Commission, Lenny James, SMD 3 to first for a full term for Design and Historic Review Commission, the Economic Development Corporation, Erika Lara, SMD 4, and Keep San Angelo Beautiful, Joe Spano for SMD 2. Ending September 2020, and John Barrio, SMD 4 to first term ending September 2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Motion passes. Item C, announcements and consideration of future agenda items. Are there any? With none, we
If
will
we adjourn.
move a second.
And so you can't blame me for this short meeting.
Well, we can. 15 minutes.
City Council adjourned.
15-minute penalty for having Hebrew.